Good morning, dear girls. I'm Dr. Kiran Deshwal, Assistant Professor English. In this video lecture, I will teach you the novel Azadi by Chaman Nahal. We left our description where the writer is describing about the daily routine of Lala Kasiram, his habit of reading newspaper and educating his wife. The writer tells us that though Lala Kasiram hates British government, but somehow he also likes them because a kind of peace to this stone land they manage to create. Think of the Sikhs after Maharaja Ranjit Singh or the Marathas. Think of the Muslims in Delhi or in the Deccan. India was divided into many parts before the arrival of the British. They put it together politically and somehow united the nation, and now they are dividing it. Think of the Muslims in Delhi or in the Deccan. When had this country ever been united? Who led down warriors like Porus or Prithviraj Chauhan? For that matter, who led down the Mughals in their fight against the British? Always our own men, because there are treacherous men who betrayed, and as a result, British established themselves in India, our own kith and kin. And the British had somehow made a nation of us, and this is true. Politically, British united India. Or was it Gandhiji who had done that? And it was a false belief among people that Gandhiji have has brought people together, and it is he who will help us in winning the freedom. Lala Kansiram was confused about this point, but he did not let the interfere with the drift of his argument. There had been less bloodshed in India in the 200 years of British Raj because they have created such an army and discipline and order which um, uprooted all the disputes in time. If whether it is 1857 revolt or small revolts after that. Lala Kasiram was confused about his point, but he did not let that interfere with the drift of his argument. There had been less bloodshed in India in the 200 years of British Raj than in any similar period in the past. No one could deny that, and it's true. Even Gandhiji or Jawaharlal ji would have to concede that. They will also agree with that. The British had brought peace to the land, and they had brought justice. They no doubt were pagans. They had no religions worth the name, no awareness of the Atma, I tell you. And he knew all their church services were a fraud. Their hymn singing and the stupid smile with which their parades moved about were merely snares for the unwary to make a few more converts to Christianity. And it was a negative point about them that they always tried to spread Christianity and forced people to adopt Christianity or to become Christian. Lalla Kansiram knew all that, thanks to Swami Dayanand, who brought back people into Hinduism. But he also knew that in impartiality they were miles ahead of any Indian he knew of, because Indians are partial at times, but British treated each and every Indian equally. He could get his way with any of his countrymen, a few rupees into the man's pocket, and the deed was done. So there is corruption. But try and bribe an Englishman, they don't agree with that. They live on their conditions and rule. Lala Kansiram quaked at the mere thought of it, and this thought shivered him. What sent him into raptures or the British was his schoolboy's passion for pageantry, their bands and their parades and the color of their uniforms. Baljeet Raizada, the nationalist editor of the paper he took, said in his columns, men like him were simpletons. The British, he said, were not as just as they were made out to be. It cost you nothing to be just with a people who were not a party to their petty disputes. What of the injustice the British had visited on the entire land? The British in India were paid their wages not in paper money but in gold. So they are paid for their work and they do their work with loyalty and sincerity. And Lala Kashiram appreciated this loyalty, which is lacking in Indian people. Each year, tons of that gold was shipped back to the Bandar motherland, where ruled those Bandar kings and queens. So all our gold is deported to London, where the Queen and Kings of these Bandar, he used to call Bandar to British people, and the gold is deported to the kings and queens of their bandar of these people. So it is said that those people work in the welfare of the empire, of the British empire, and they are loyal towards that. And Lala Kansiram somewhere feels guilty that why we Indian don't show that loyalty towards our leaders. If it could had happened, Mughals could not have come into India, and Marathas will not be defeated. And it's a drawback for our country and our nation. And where does the money they take away come from? It is a result of taxes imposed upon Indian people, as the theatrical Rajada of the Urdu Daily Inqilab. So there is a column in Indian in Urdu newspaper which Lala Kansiram read in. It is entitled as Inqilab, and he writes about the nation and the patriotic fervor. It comes from the pocket of each one of you because we bribe them. That's why they enrich themselves and they deport this money. Lala Kasiram invariably felt at his pockets every time he read this favorite phrase of Rajada. And whenever it's very funny, whenever Rajada reads that we Indians bribe, we fill the pocket of the Englishman, and Lala Kasiram always realizes his pockets. The first time he read the Inqilab, he took out his money and counted it pesa by pesa, that how much I have left with. Now he confined himself to feeling the weight of it from the outside. But it was always all there, every pesa of it. He is not bribing. He thinks that I am a patriotic person. I love my nation. There is nationalism in me because I do not bribe to British. Rajada said the British king was not a king but an Ali Baba because a lot of gold is deported to him, and England was really a robber's den because at that time the British Empire was spreaded in so many countries of the world, and everywhere their policy was same, and their policy was just to rob people and to deport that money and wealth to England. So here we have a beautiful comparison that British king is compared with Ali Baba, and England is compared with robbers den. So here you can see that the writer is very brilliant in describing England in such a way, filled with the loot of the world. Ah, the things Rajada said. Lala Kasiram did not quite approve of many of them because he's a rational person, but he enjoyed reading them all the same. After all, he too wanted to belong to the times, he too wanted to claim for himself the role of a revolutionary. I have been to prison, he would boast before his listeners, real ones or imaginary. So at that time, it was a thing to be proud if anyone has had to be sent in prison for the nation, and it was a thing to be proud that we are doing sacrifice for our nation. And I have even been to prison. These lines shows the revolutionary zeal. He would boast before his listeners, real ones or imaginary. It mattered little if the only night he had spent in prison was in connection with the sales tax strike, where, along with the merchants of his trade, he had taken part in a hurtle much against his wishes, and in a procession even more so. So here, the statement is very paradoxical and it's very ironic. And the writer wants to say that Lala Kasiram feels proud in it that I have been to jail, but the reality behind that is very different. He had been to jail for a strike, for a merchant strike. There was nothing. Like nationalism in that he was not doing anything for the nation, he was doing this for his own benefit. When some of the merchants, including himself, were taken into custody, oh God, now what will become of my family? This was his thought. He was just thinking about his family, about his business, not about the nation. And even then, he feels proud in this. And forced to pass the night in the district lockup. The point was, he had been inside the four walls of a prison, and with the passage of time, he had convinced himself it was because of his part in the freedom movement. He gives himself vast importance. It was in similar prisons that Gandhi and Jawaharlal lay and wasted their lives away. Wasted their lives away. So he is associating himself with those great leaders, and this thing gave him pleasure. This thought gave him pleasure with his own experience to back him up. He could quite see the preventions that they had gone through this on the verge of tears. Some heroes like Bhagat Singh paid for their courage with their lives, as indeed he too was very near to doing that night. And at that night, he was also thinking like that I will also sacrifice like Bhagat Singh. But that was only that one night. After that, the zeal was over. He, Lala Kasiram, the registered grain merchant of Sialkot, the risk he took that night. But then, what was one's life compared to the honor of one's country anyway? Carried away by the emotion of the moment in the last article of Rajada he had read, he would shout, "Oh, they are they are dogs, these Angrez," and to continue for a while in that state of self induced indignation. He kept repeating. He couldn't agree with Rajada, though, that the shows and the parades the British put on periodically were meant to keep the average citizens befooled. And the parade done by British attracted Lala Kasiram. It pleased him. That's why whenever Rajada said that it's a show and it's a pomp and show, British just want to make a show of their power, of their dignity. So and but Lala Kasiram never believed in that because he liked this aspect while they plundered them behind their back. Now he was not an average citizen, and even he liked those shows, and he liked the British for doing them for him. So there is divided personality, you can say. There were many such peasants in his mind, and he went fondly over his memories. The most recent one was the victory parade in 1945 when um, in Second World War America dropped bomb on Japan and the World War over, and it was a victory to be celebrated by the British government. So there was a victory parade in 1945 and Lala Kansiram liked that. So the British had won once again, so the Germans had in the end lost, and the Japanese too. Ah, said Lala Kasiram slowly, not making it clear. Whether the abuse would mean for the British or the Germans, no one knows for whom he is abusing. To whom he is abusing, that was a subtlety of the Punjabi language he enjoyed immensely. Abuse could mean 1,000 different things depending on the way you said it. And these abuses are commonly used by Punjabi people, but they touched only the fringe of Punjabi ingenuity in the matter of obscenities. So, here you can see the tact of our writer who is using the words of local dialect in running lines, and and we are unable to differentiate, and the use is very apt and suggestive, and it is used to clarify the meaning or the message which the writer wants to convey, the emotions and feelings of our protagonist, and the bitter feelings of our protagonist, you can say. Pedigreed Punjabis went much further. They fabricated compound swear words where a little arithmetic was necessary before you could see through the insult. And here Lala Kasiram is our writer Chaman Nahal is able to describe the actual rural scenario of that time, the slang which people used whenever they speak in a bitter manner. And Lala Kasiram knew exactly how it was done, but like a good Arya Samaji, he stayed away from too hurtful phrases because he was Arya Samaji, and in Arya Samaj, it was a rule not to hurt people. And that was simple. A compound obscenity run something like, and these phrases were not necessary to speak out even when people used to speak these phrases. And we will stop our video here and we will be continuing next video. Thanks for watching.